Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Salut tout le monde. Hey everybody. What a hockey game. Now that is a good Stanley Cup Final game. Happy Pride Month to everyone, to all our awesome fans. Thank you for everyone that's in the chat. We're going to be getting to all of you awesome people very, very soon. Today, I am Marc Dumont. I will be your host for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, which, I'll be perfectly honest, I had to change my notes at the last minute there. I think we all thought the game was going a completely different way. You can see right now, my co-host, we have Avry here. We're going to bring him in just a moment. We're both huge Brett Kulak fans. Huge. Absolutely. So we'll talk about the Stanley Cup Final, but we're also going to have a 40-minute segment on the greatness that is Brett Kulak. Before we get into it, first of all, again, thank you all for joining us. Let us know what you thought about the game. How worried were you that this was going to be a dud of a Stanley Cup Final? I'm just happy for Panthers fans to get to see that win. That is really cool. Something that'll grow the game exponentially in the United States. All right, before we get into it, we're gonna have a word from our sponsors, those that bring us the our stream. And once again, welcome to Game Over, Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Get in on the action and make your bet with Sports Interaction. Every hit, every shot, every goal, even those in overtime. From all your favorite sports teams and players to professional trolls, that's what it says in my script, but I'm going to say professional clutch players like Matthew Tkachuk. With competitive odds, the best live playing in more ways than ever to get into the game, like Minute Madness, our exclusive game with so many opportunities to win by the minute. Download the app in Ontario or use the QR code you see at the bottom of the screen. You can also head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. That is sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Everybody, how was that for a hockey game?
Wow, that was something else, Mark. And you know what? We got a series now. Florida's back in this 2-1, and I'm really happy for the Florida fans. Going to see the first ever Panthers Cup Final game, FLA Arena. First ever. Sounded loud. That was a fun game to watch, Mark.
And I think we all had the same idea that this was going towards a quick, because I'll be perfectly honest, it wasn't the best game the Panthers have played in these playoffs. I think we're all going that same way, but geez, we're going to get into it in the segment, and we're going to want the fans to tell us what they think. But Matthew Tkachuk is not just becoming a face of the NHL, he's quickly becoming one of the most clutch guys in the NHL, isn't he?
No, he totally is. He had the game winners we saw against the Boston Bruins. He had the game winners against Carolina, and now here he is now keeping the Panthers season alive, really, because we know how tough it is to come back from being down 0-3. He scores to send this game to overtime, and you know what, Hick, right now, if he scores one more game winner for the Panthers, we might see number 19 retired before the series is over, Mark.
Straight to the after the last game, they're gonna pull the sweater. You know when they give it to the fans usually at the end of the year, they're just gonna whip it up to the rafters. Next year, Tkachuk number 18. How good though, and tons of credit to Tkachuk. I think he might even have tipped that last goal. We're gonna let the chat tell us whether or not he did. But Sergei Bobrovsky, is he back?
You know, it seems like that because, we all know about how early on in Panthers' tenure, he struggled in net. We saw the carousel of goaltending change for Florida between him, Alex Lyon, Spencer Knight. But right now, he's getting hot at the right time. And that's all that matters in the postseason, really, is if your goalie can get hot at the right time, it can mean you're winning the Stanley Cup.
And we all know, well, personally, as someone that's covered the Montreal Canadiens, I can attest to that is very much true. Because it's funny, though, Avery, we're talking about recently, the talk has been stop investing in goalies. You're talking about guys like Adin Hill and Alex Lyon and going even all the way back to Antti Niemi with the Blackhawks. Is Sergei Bobrovsky kind of reminding people that once in a while having an established goalie that has a track record is worth it?
No, totally. And I remember Mark mentioning Anthony Niemi, the way he's standing on his head. Even getting hot at the right time. I think back to J.S. Jaguar when he got hot at the right time in 2003 and turned into an actual brick wall for the Ducks late in those three playoffs.
Absolutely. Okay, so we got some comments here in the chat. Alfredo Garcia saying the refs were horrible. Listen, I mean, I have Kerry Fraser that follows me on Twitter, and I've got Dave Jackson. Fortunately, I don't have Dave Peel that follows me, so I have to be a little careful. But the cross-checking penalty on Radko Gudas was one of the softest, shittiest calls I've ever seen. Plus, it was to even things up. I mean, the call on that, the penalty that was taken because Gudas got rammed in the boards wasn't great, but that cross-checking wouldn't have broken an egg. How do you feel the rest did in this game, Avery?
I hate to be the guy that goes on officiating, but all postseason long, Mark, they have just botched so many calls this postseason again. They've been awful. They've been terrible. We've seen once again in this postseason the officials getting things wrong, and I'm not sure what you do, but man, officiating in these playoffs, Mark, has been straight doo doo.
straight doo doo. I like that. That just you can't get worse than straight doo doo. That's it. Absolutely straight doo doo. We got Carl the Man is in Sweden right now. He's cheering the Panthers Islanders fans, so a little bit of solidarity in the East. Is this a brand new series, or was this just Florida's kind of like the Habs? They're getting their one big win in the finals.
I would like for it to be. I would like a big game that gets them back in the series. So I called, even though I have Vegas winning, I have this series going a full 7 games. So hopefully, this is the game that sparks the Panthers comeback, because we did see life from this Panthers team defensively, and guys like Carter Verhaeghe, like Matt Tkachuk, finding ways to get to the net and getting goals in the series in this game here, Mark.
I'm excited for the Panthers, and we're going to talk about the Golden Knights. It's not going to be a purely pro Panthers stream, but you have guys like Barkov that hasn't really, or Reinhardt, that haven't really made a huge impact yet. So there's still potential for the Florida Panthers if some of these guys wake up to really take over. I feel like this was a big emotional win, the kind of win that your locker room opponents, your opponents in the locker room are having a really bad night, right? Because they're 2 minutes away from essentially guaranteeing they're going to go home with some silverware. So how do you think the Golden Knights bounce back from this one?
Ooh, well, I gotta say, first of all, that's a demoralizing loss for the Golden Knights in a game in which a lot of things went right for you. You scored power play goals when your power play all year long has been bad. I mean, watching Vegas get into the Oilers, their power play was anemic, but seeing Vegas power play get 2 goals in this game, a rare feat. You gotta be right on cloud 9. But if you're Vegas, you got to reestablish your forecheck. You got to pressure in Game 5 back at home, and we know how loud and I like a better term, annoying Vegas can be with that crowd, because it's one of the more raucous ones in all of the NHL. So I think Vegas has to establish forecheck, get pressure on Borowski early on, and try to get a score sheet within the first 5 minutes. That they've done quite often in this postseason, Mark.
Yeah, they've really well. I mean, I feel like both teams have done a great job taking advantage of, their chances. Like the Panthers are such a good counterattack team. It's been working like a charm for them. We have the John Van Beesbroek has been referenced a couple times, so I think I'm going to say right now, Bobrovsky's probably been much better. We've also have some people telling us to settle down a little bit. Okay. Because we're a little too excited about the Panthers, but I seriously think that this is a brand new series, Avery. Like we're looking at a team that essentially took all the momentum away, even though they lost the first 2 games. Or am I just exaggerating here?
I wouldn't count this team out, because we saw the Florida Panthers battle back from being down 3-1 to the Boston Bruins, the best regular season team in NHL history.
They were not bad, yeah.
And knocked it out in round 1. So no, I'm absolutely not going to count Florida out, even though, yes, they are playing the number 1 team in Western Conference, the very good, the very elite Vegas Golden Knights. You mentioned it earlier. If other guys in this roster can step up, you still have Sam Bennett, Anthony Duclair.
Bennett's who I meant to say. I think Reinhardt's been. I meant to say Bennett earlier. That's the guy I had in mind. Yeah.
Okay. No worries. Yeah, this is a team that still has Bennett, Duclair, other weapons that have played great other games, and they can step up as well in Game 5. Then yeah, I'm not gonna say it's impossible to see this series go to a Game 6.
If we're looking at Jay Cherry mentions here, it says Tkachuk has put himself on an elite level. Who does he kind of remind you of? Because I'm having a hard time. Well, I'm having a hard time getting the sentence out, but I'm having a hard time thinking of a guy that combines that physical play, the trolling. Let's be honest, he's fantastic at driving people up the wall, and the ability to back it up. Like, I don't want to say he's like Zlatan, okay, because that's really pushing it, but hey man, he's the kind of guy that really yaps a lot, opens his mouth, but he can back it up. There are few players in the NHL like that, right?
Yeah, no, those guys are that's well, Zlatan, even though it's football, I think Zlatan's a really good comparison, but yeah, guys who can back up in the NHL. Oh, I'm trying to think.
Right?
Who are really some big guys.
Maybe the chat can help us out with some guy. Like, he kind of makes me think a little bit of Patrick Roy back in the day, like pretty cocky, but you couldn't do much about it because he was going to go out there and win.
Mm-hmm.
Marchand. Okay, yeah, there you go. Hunter F in the chat mentions it. It's Brad Marchand.
Yes, Brad. Yeah, exactly. Brad Marchand is.
He has a physical element that Marchand doesn't. Like Marchand, yeah, he's a little ball of hate, and I'd say he's probably a little more productive. But Tkachuk can go out there and absolutely lay you out. Now, we saw tonight, he took a little bit of his own medicine, but bounced back. I feel like he just has almost like an Eric Lindros skill set. And I know I'm aging myself a little bit here, but yeah, maybe I'm getting a little too excited. Maybe it's a little too late, but I almost feel like he has some Lindros to him.
A little bit. I mean, I know his dad didn't talk, but Keith was that physical forward who had to really back up his play.
Oh, and he was dirty. Keith Tkachuk was dirty.
But Keith didn't really talk, though. I know Keith was there, but Keith wasn't really a yapper, if I recall correctly. So
yeah, we're looking at, other than Tkachuk, who do you think? And we're going to talk about Bobrovsky. Do you think that Brendan Montour is gonna? Because hey, he's up to what, 7 goals? But
7 goals, yeah.
One since Game 1 of the Leafs series. We saw him get injured at the end there. We saw Gudas as well. If the chat can provide us an update, that'd be great. But Brendan Montour isn't spoken of as an elite defenseman. Do you think maybe he's entering that? I mean, he should be, but maybe now in the public image, Brendan Montour could be considered an elite defenseman.
I definitely do think Montour can be in that conversation. He is someone who quietly has been producing. Hey, my camera just went off.
That's fine. We all remember how glorious you look with your great style. While you figure this out, okay, so they're saying right now, Robert mentioned that is Carter. I have to copy paste his name. Verhaeghe's 4th career playoff OT goal, which is huge. That's a huge amount of goals. Zach mentions, and Zach would know it quite well, Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah,
what would you say? Did you hear what I said there? Sorry. Zach is mentioning Leon Draisaitl might be a good comparison for a guy like Matthew Tkachuk. And you know what? Size-wise, grit-wise, scoring ability-wise, I don't know if Draisaitl is as much of a troll, but that's not a bad comparison.
That's not. And people forget. Leon's a big boy. Leon's has size to him too. I know it may not. I know sometimes it may not appear on TV that way at times. But you see Leon in person, Leon's a big boy. That's not a bad comparison, Mark.
Absolutely.
From Zach.
Where Adam Firebear is mentioning the Legion of Doom line, and it's true. You always, but I always forget. It's Michael Renberg that was the third guy on there, right? It was Marc.
Yes.
Okay, and John
Michael
Leclerc.
Renberg. Mm-hmm.
That was one of the most fun lines to watch, unless you're a Habs fan, because they essentially they were like the government. They were subsidizing that line. Okay, we and Dakota, who big Panthers fans saying here. Swaggy's just clutch, and it's always fun to have a guy on your lineup that is gonna really pick it up for a big game, and the swagger is back. So what do the Golden Knights have to do now? Game 2, you said score early, but do they have to pay a little more attention to a guy like Tkachuk?
I think so. I think in your game plan for Bruce Cassidy, you have to find ways to keep to slow down Tkachuk, to watch him in the offensive zone. You have no choice, or else you're going to get burned.
Yeah,
we saw how he gave fits to the Bruins, to the Hurricanes. He has to be a guy you watch out for and you try to game plan around come Game 5.
Absolutely. I just feel like if you're going to focus on him a little, because we saw tonight, Maurice was keeping his top lines away from the Vegas top line, so the line matching is in Panthers' favor. By game 6, that'll no longer be the case. By game 6, no, game 5, that'll no longer be the case. I feel like Tkachuk obviously can just absolutely buffet on guys that aren't at his level, so they're gonna have to pay attention to him there. We're seeing Carl the Man is saying Gudas for MVP because he's an elite offensive defenseman and he has a great beard. Okay, great beard, absolutely. As from someone who's got blonde hair, and I just don't grow beards because no one with light hair should ever grow beards. That's just the way it works, because it comes out white and patchy and orange. And I look like a disheveled potato farmer, which is exactly what one of my bosses told me once. I wanted to go live with the Habs, and she's like, shave that. You look terrible. He does have a hell of a beard, but let's get away from the joke part. Gudas is very underrated. A lot of people think that he's a goon, and I get it. He's dirty. He's incredibly efficient in his own zone. He's what we would actually call a defensive defenseman, but not just an excuse for saying he's bad defensively. Gudas is damn good in his own zone. Do you agree with that?
No, totally. He's one of the more responsible D-men in his own zone. And of course, I know Zach would agree with me that one of the guys people want to see at Edmonton was Radko Gudas, someone who I think Oilers fans still want to see come to this team in the fall. But no, Radko Gudas has been one of the more defensively responsible D-man for Florida. But I think one thing too, I know the Conn Smythe talk. I think Conn Smythe, for the most part, defers to player who scores the most points in the postseason, as opposed to at times the best player. Mm-hmm. So I think if Gudas was in that points debate, he might get that more. But no, I think he certainly is one of the better D-men in this league right now, especially one of the more responsible ones for the Panthers we've seen this postseason, Mark.
Every year, every team tries to find a guy like Radko Gudas before the playoffs, and they end up with guys like Ben Sherratt. Like that's like it's not all big guys are created equal, and I would say that really every GM would love to have a guy like Gudas, but they're so few and far between that are just great in their own zone but don't do much offensively. So keep paying those first round picks for guys like Sherratt, though. That's I shouldn't be trashing the Panthers now. It's a celebration of the Panthers. They had that mistake with Sherratt, but now that he's no longer there, they're advancing to the Stanley Cup Final. Now, Avry, you bring up the MVP. I think it's really interesting now because going into it, this chat, I was thinking we're going to be talking about Eichel or Marchessault. Now, let's debate that side of it. For the Vegas Golden Knights, if they go on to win the Stanley Cup, who do you think? You can name a third, but let's be honest, it comes down to those two. Who do you think deserves it?
I think Marchessault is definitely going to be a guy who will be I think right now it stands clubhouse leader. But I think for Vegas side, Adin Hill will get a good look. I think Adin Hill is a guy who definitely will get a look and be in strong consideration to be the Conn Smythe winner if Vegas does win this series. I think Marchessault right now is the leader in that race on the Vegas side, but I think Adin Hill is going to be number 2 on my part. And again, we saw what he did. Coming to the postseason, I don't think he would ever been in that consideration coming in when it started. We saw him play wonderfully when Laurent Brossoit went down against the Oilers. We saw him play great against Dallas. So I think if he's able to bounce back going forward the rest of the games here, I think Adin Hill gets a good look to be the Conn Smythe guy for Vegas.
I love that you mentioned him because this was actually, I thought the first 2 games, Florida probably had the advantage in chance. Well, no, they did in 5-on-5 chances. Special teams is just a disaster. Like it ended up being okay, but the Panthers are kind of Kevin bringing the chili into the office when the special teams are coming into play. Like something bad's gonna happen. But those first two games, I feel like that he was a big reason why the Golden Knights really took that series lead. Now tonight, it goes back to Sergei Bobrovsky. Does he get considered for the Conn Smythe, or is it just? Actually, hold on. I'm gonna go back to the Eichel debate. I'm gonna suggest that Eichel deserves some consideration here because he leads them in points. He set the record for Golden Knights points in the playoffs, and it's just fun to see him on a team where he's healthy and he's surrounded by good players. Like that's just the greedy hockey player in me that wants to see it. He'll finish the playoffs as the leading scorer most likely. Jack Eichel, almost all of his points or his assists, his primary assist, which that's what he's doing best, of an even strength. does Eichel not deserve to be up there with Marchessault and Aiden Hill?
No, valid. No, very valid point. I think Eichel could be in there as well too. And you know what I like about Jack Eichel is you mentioned how he's scoring what he's doing for Vegas. He's not the only guy. I mean, we saw in Buffalo, he was the man. I think he'd play more comfortably because he doesn't have to be the number one guy. He doesn't have to be that end all be all guy. He's surrounded by around Stone, by Chandler Stevenson, other options. He can just be a cog in the machine that is Vegas, as opposed to being that number one guy who lives and dies by what he does.
That pass, though, to Marchessault, who, by the way, undrafted, if he ends up winning the Conn Smythe, an undrafted player winning the Conn Smythe would be, I think it would be the first time ever. Without checking, I'm going to just confidently say it would be the first time ever. But I just love seeing what Eichel can do. It's so good for hockey to have the superstars, really, really performing incredibly well. Okay, so Dakota mentions man, thanks for mentioning Marchessault. I still think it's brilliant that even if they gave him away and they paid, that they're still back here facing him. I know it's kind of ironic, but it just goes to show Florida, the Sherrod thing wasn't great and neither was their expansion, but they've done pretty darn good in the last couple of years to really revamp themselves and become, I don't think we would have called them a contender during the season, but it's hard to deny that the Florida Panthers aren't built for the playoffs. This is a team that was essentially built to make some noise in the playoffs, weren't they?
No, of course. And, what I love about the NHL, Mark, is that compared to most other leagues, you rarely see, compared to other leagues, the quote unquote number 8 seed. It's funny how the Heat and the Panthers.
I was just thinking of the Heat. Yeah.
Number 8 seeds in playing a championship. But you see it more often in hockey compared to basketball or baseball.
There's the LA Kings that did it. The Habs did it against the Bruins several times. The Sens did it against the Habs. Yeah.
It was in 06 against Carolina, where the number 8 seed made it to the Cup Final. So I love seeing the lowest seed make it all the way. I'm a big fan of teams being a giant killer, but it's fun. And Florida has shown that they are not your typical 8 seed. They have enough weapons to really put some fear in some of the bigger teams in the Western Conference.
Now, I did find this funny is that Leon Draisaitl is still leading the NHL in goals. what do we make of that? Is that just because he's so damn dominant? Because I feel like he hasn't played in about a month, which that was supposed to be an exaggeration, but it might be accurate. Does Leon Draisaitl get consideration for the Conn Smythe, Avry?
Wouldn't that be funny? A guy who, it's funny. We had the same debate. There was the same debate last year with Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
After Oilers lost to the Avalanche. Wouldn't that be funny if a guy who didn't even make it to the third round comes out in a suit to win the Conn Smythe? Right. Yeah, it's mine. I didn't even win. I didn't even make it to the round 3. The Conn Smythe is mine. But it's funny. But it goes to show, again, just how dominant Leon Draisaitl can be. We saw it one time we're working very well, and we saw how on the power play, that is where Leon Draisaitl is in his element, and any team would love that. I mean, heck, the man was challenging Tim Kerr for the most power play goals of all time in a single season, a record that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of how hard it is to break. He fell 3 goals short of Tim Kerr's mark in a single season.
Yeah, and Robert mentions, he tied. So they're tied now, Masha. So I still think if you look at goals per 60, you probably got Draisaitl way up there. Now, we're talking about, everyone has essentially the same Conn Smythe guys, but let's talk about this series. What went from possibly being a snooze-worthy series is setting up to be pretty darn exciting. So I want the chat to let us know, who do you think is going to take the next game? Because all the momentum is in Florida's corner, and then we'll get to you. But I honestly feel like Florida's going to come out flying in the next game, and if Vegas allows them to score that first goal, they're going to be in big trouble, because once you got that momentum in the playoffs, it's really hard to stop. And I think that was their 9th overtime win. Is that someone can double check that for me? But they're almost reaching like Habs in '93 level of overtime wins. So there's something special in the air when your team knows going into overtime that they're going to win. And I think obviously the Florida Panthers have just all the confidence. So I'm not your friend, buddy. Well, I'm not your guy, friend. Saying Big Walt's boy should win the Conn Smythe regardless of which team wins. Bob, too, if there was no risk of him. Yeah. So the issue that a lot of people have is that losing teams should never get the Conn Smythe. I think the last guy was what? Gigai? Is he?
Yes, it was.
And that was so tough because if you go back, I believe his mother was actually quite sick, or she had just passed away, and it was playing on him. You could see when he got that Conn Smythe, he was like just upset about it. But now, would you be against that, giving it to a guy on the losing team?
No, not at all. If the best player in the playoffs is on the losing team, doesn't matter. The award is for the best playoff performer. Doesn't matter if the team loses or not. It's award to the best playoff performer. It could be a guy on the winning team or the losing team. That's how it is. You don't have to give it to the guy on the winning team if the best playoff performer wasn't on that side.
Yeah, no, I love that. I absolutely love that concept, and especially if a guy like Tkachuk has just almost willed them to the playoffs and almost willed them through the playoffs, right? And that is underrating everyone else. But if you had to circle one guy, it would be Tkachuk. Now, but the thing is, there are strong candidates on both sides, so that probably won't happen. Okay, Dakota brings up a pretty cool. Dakota Parent says, "Do it for Luongo." I feel like everyone in the entire NHL, except for maybe Vegas fans, want to see Roberto Luongo just celebrate. He reminds me, in The Sopranos when they're cheering for Anthony's kid there, and they're oh yeah, they're all excited. That's what Roberto Luongo reminds me every time he's celebrating one of those big wins. How great would it be to see Roberto Luongo with the cup?
No, that would be amazing. And Roberto's been one of the more likable guys throughout the entire history of NHL.
Right.
And I think he's someone who definitely deserves to not just win a Stanley Cup, won a Stanley Cup as a member of the Panthers front office. That would be an amazing story to see.
Oh God, yeah, and he's just a good guy, So we always want to root. We always talk about there's good people in hockey. There's not that many good people in hockey, if we're being perfectly honest. Honestly, there's a few there and there. I love Tyler Toffoli, for example, but Roberto Luongo is legitimately one of those good guys. They're saying here Florida. Oh, Florida in 7. Also, Carl the Man saying Florida in 7. Dakota's saying Florida. Florida in 7 would be a pretty cool ending. I feel like we're really underestimating the Golden Knights now. But what's your call for how the rest of this series will unfold?
Oh wow, I do think Vegas takes I do think Vegas does take Game 5. But again, I don't think this is the end of the Florida Panthers. They're too good to go down in 5 or even 6. So I can definitely see them battling back at home and finding ways to force Game 7. Like I mentioned off the top, Mark, seeing FLA live and seeing people who were down at the game tonight among fans, among media, it seemed like a raucous barn. And I know, and that really has an effect. Some people might downplay crowds, but that has an effect on a player, on a team. So I definitely want to see us go back to Florida once again, because that was a fun atmosphere tonight, Mark.
Well, you brought it up at the start of the show, the first ever win in the Stanley Cup, and I don't want to insult Nikita Kucherov here, but just one win in the Cup Final is still something worth celebrating, right? And when we talk about growing the game, I know a lot of Canadians are going to roll their eyes, and I don't care for it. Roll your eyes all you damn want as on your way to Tim Hortons for some mediocre coffee, but it's good for the game to have cities like Florida, big markets, enjoy hockey, kind of embrace it. This is what you need to grow the game. And again, I've heard all the criticism. A lot of it's just based in jealousy. But let's be perfectly honest. American teams have been doing a better job getting themselves prepared to win the Stanley Cup. So this isn't, I know we can all blame Bettman. And hey, I'll boo him. I'll boo. If I see him on the street, I will park my car. I will run up to him and I will boo him. They had to tell me at the Bell Center once, because he was coming to talk to some of the employees. They're like, "Mark, you shut the F up. Like, you do not boo Gary Bettman when he comes into the room." But I'm gonna say American teams overall have done a better job getting themselves not just ready for the playoffs, but investing, going all in on making a Stanley Cup run. Do you agree with that?
No, you're not wrong. I know people like to throw out the conspiracy of, Bettman hates Canadian teams. Bettman hates Canada. It's silly. There are fair criticisms to make of Gary Bettman. There are many criticisms to make of Bettman. But him holding back Canadian teams, or Canadian teams losing because of him, is completely asinine. That's not an actual thing that happens. Canadian teams and the building up of these teams have not been enough in certain times to win a Stanley Cup. Certainly have gone against them, sure. I mean, there've been bad breaks. Absolutely, there've been bad breaks. You can cite bad breaks for different teams. You can cite, the missed goal, for Martin Jelna against Tampa. You can cite the unfortunate injury.
Oh, I remember that. That was such a good series too. That was one of the best Stanley Cup Final series.
Yeah, and you can also reference '06 Edmonton and Carolina. Edmonton, if Rolson one doesn't get hurt, if Edmonton doesn't blow a 3-0 lead in game one, they probably win. They probably win that series. But the idea of blaming this stuff on Bettman, I just think it's ridiculous. And you're right, Mark. I love the Sunbelt markets. I love what these markets bring to the game in terms of growth, in terms of new fans, new eyeballs getting in this game. And when people, and I always see the trolls, the jokes, of ha ha, move so and so Sunbelt team, move this, move that. There are so many players now who are in the NHL. We're in an era now, Mark. We've reached a point in which we've had Sunbelt teams long enough, Mark, in the NHL, to now have Sunbelt children in the league. We've got kids who played NHL, who grew up, who are from California, who are from Nevada, who are from Arizona, who are from Florida, who grew up watching these teams. But don't tell me these teams don't have an impact on hockey when you've got kids in the NHL who grew up watching these teams down in South America.
And the cool part here is you have Jack Eichel and Matthew Tkachuk, who are American born. Like the bitter Canadian in me can't even say like, oh, our players. No. Like the stars that are leading both the sides are from the United States. And that, again, as you mentioned, is born from the early investment. Now, in Tkachuk's case, his dad was playing in the States. But still, that it's really fun to see, because that's, again, the NHL has always lagged behind other leagues just because of that lack of an appeal to other regions, right? So, I will say this though, and I don't want to put a negative note, and we're gonna get into some fun stuff just in a minute, but I feel the way the NHL scheduled this, it couldn't have been worse if it was done by a drunken octopus. Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, Avry, who did this? The Memorial Cup started 2 days after the Panthers clinched, and it ended right after the Panthers played their first game of the final. Like, that's a whole GD tournament that got slotted in there. What's the NHL doing, Avry? Is this, I know it's tough to book rinks, but I feel like they've really done a disservice. What a coincidence, to their own product by the way they've scheduled this and kind of marketed this final.
Right? Like, I'm baffled in terms of how the NHL has done scheduling of this Cup final, other playoff games. It's as if, like, do you not want people to watch to your product the way they schedule games, both on ABC and on TNT? Like, it's baffling stuff, and this could possibly turn people off because of just how odd the breaks. Games have been changed or timed. Like, this is not how a Big Four league should operate when it comes to scheduling games, Mark. It isn't.
And I'll be honest, at one point, I kind of just slipped my mind that the final hadn't ended. I was just like, oh yeah, there is hockey today, but hey, now we only have to wait until Saturday for the next game. So we're going to get the first Saturday Stanley Cup Final game. Who do you think is going to play, and I'd love to hear from the chat on this one, who do you think is going to play the biggest role in the next game? Is it going to be a goalie? It's going to be a forward? Is it going to be one of these defensemen? I feel like Pietrangelo has been kind of quiet. He's always pretty decent in the playoffs. We'll see what the chat says, but who do you think is going to play the biggest role in game number 4?
I'm gonna go with defenseman. I'm gonna go on the biggest. I'm gonna go with Zach Whitecloud. He's someone who I think I've liked what Whitecloud's brought all postseason long. I think he's gonna be an X factor for Vegas going forward in the game on Saturday night, Mark.
I absolutely love that. And as Dakota mentions in our chat here, scheduling was horrendous and it ruined the momentum for the Panthers, which I didn't bring that up, but that's actually the best point. Dakota, do you want my job? Are you coming for my job? The best point here is that the Panthers, the reward for clinching early was lose all your momentum. Like that, that's terrible. That is absolutely horrible on the part of the NHL. And you'd figure this is golden for the NHL. I know not a big market, whatever, but this is how you actually grow the game. So this has been the opportunity to do it. Now, one of the reasons I'm sure, and I haven't checked, is just that rinks are busy and whatnot. But usually the NHL will actually hold certain dates, right? So they'll get priority, especially if they're the lead tenant. And it just feels like they kind of, what bothered me the most wasn't just the big gap. It was that after game 2, there was a 4-day gap between game 2 and game 3. Like I don't think we've ever gone through that before, have we? I'm trying to think back now. That I don't think that's ever happened.
No, I don't think so. And you mentioned the whole gap with Florida waiting. I know. There is a value when it comes to rest and wanting to recover, but too much rest is a bad thing. And then these gaps, we put up momentum. Like it, I just find it so odd how we're killing momentum and killing the movement of players who want to keep this series going.
Yeah.
And we stop for 4 days. We stop for 5 days. Like
and the fans too, right? Like the fans kind of, the party kind of stopped.
Yeah, exactly. You're hurting interest. You're hurting your own product. Like this is not how. And we see other leagues. We see in NBA. There's always a finals game every couple of days. You know, there's not going to really be much of a big gap in NBA finals. There isn't going to be much of a big gap for the World Series or MLB playoffs. Only NHL likes the NHL sees a rake and steps on it on purpose way too often.
They're the Krusty the Clown of hockey leagues constantly.
Constantly.
Just absolutely constantly. Now, one thing that I think is pretty cool and also I always forget this because I'm 150 years old. Like I when I went to school, YouTube didn't exist. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it out there, right? Like,
wow.
Yeah. The first internet I went onto was like a BBS, and it wasn't really internet. So I started coding for HTML on Notepad, but not the computer program Notepad, like a literal notepad. We had notepads and we'd write the code with pencil. That being said, I think it's pretty darn cool here that Bruce Cassidy went to the cup. Like, I know NHL coaches are all classy and all that, but man, it must be pretty fucking cool for him to look at the Bruins get eliminated right away and him just kind of flex his way to the Stanley Cup Final. Do you think he's smiling on the inside there a little bit?
He should be. Yeah, I would. Why not? The team that let you go, lost in the first round, is at home, and you are now 2-3 for a Cup Final. Yeah, heck yeah. I know he won't really do it though. I would because I'm petty. But yeah, he definitely did. Like Bruce Cassidy is one of the better coaches in the league. Yeah. I know he's a reputation for being. One of the more harder coaches on his players in the league. But the man finds ways to get the most out of his club. He's got Vegas 2-3 for a Cup Final. Teams do well under him. So yeah, he should definitely pump his chest a little bit.
I would be like posting on their Instagram account like lol, like there was a picture of Boston. They ended up in Tottenham. They ended up going to take a picture with the Tottenham Spurs, which I don't think Boston knew what the Spurs are essentially. They're a meme. They're the bottling meme, like, right? They're the EPL representation of failure. And also, I am an Arsenal fan. I'm just gonna put it out there. But if I was Bruce Cassidy, I would be so petty, and that's where I'm a Viking when I'm petty. Like I would just absolutely be sending messages to the guy that fired me, like, hey, are you busy? If you want to come watch the game, I got tickets for you. Like, I know you don't have much going on right now. Might as well come on down. Dave brings up a great point in the chat here that I actually completely forgot. It's the heat, right? That's one of the issues with the scheduling. I guess obviously you're going to give priority to the NBA.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point, Mark. And let's be honest now. As great as this run is, the NBA is a far bigger league than the NHL, and it always will be. Let's get it twisted here. The NBA's reach is 1,000 times more, and impact on sports is 1,000 times more than hockey. That's never going to change. So yes, I can see why they'll take priority.
Hey, just one tweet about Zion Williamson gets more attention than the entire NHL season. Okay, y'all can look it up. But now, what's interesting about that is what I wanted to kind of, and we've been running along. I forgot to say, subscribe. As I was mentioning how old I am, I forgot what I was saying. That's how old I am. Please like and subscribe, or else Adam Wild will take my computer away and buy another season ticket for himself at the Leafs games. But what I was gonna say, rough. Our bosses are just the absolute meanest, right? They're just never supportive. They're never gonna. No, we have the best bosses in the world. What I was gonna say though is going back to what you're mentioning about the NBA. One of the reasons is that they let the personalities shine. So we're seeing a guy like Matthew Tkachuk go on people, and hockey fans are always like, oh my God, wow, we had, one of our guys was on there. What do you think the NHL can do better I don't think it's an issue with the players. I think it's an issue of how they market them. Obviously, we raise them to be hockey robots, but what can the NHL do better to have more opportunities for guys like Matthew Tkachuk?
Honestly, well, I think keep that synergy. Well, first of all, I would love to see the NBA. I know ESPN has the NBA Finals. Make an NBA on TNT panel in Sunrise. Bring down. I know Charles down there. Bring down Kane, those guys to Sunrise, and do a little synergy between the NBA and NHL crew in Florida. But also, too, one thing about Matthew Tkachuk is that one thing with hockey too, Mark, is that I'm not sure there's a lot of guys in the league who want to be that guy. We saw PK being that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Tkachuk is that guy.
Because they get criticized, right? They get absolutely demolished for having a personality.
Mm-hmm. And that's the problem is that, yes, the league needs to do better. But yeah, I don't think a lot of guys want to be that gregarious, that outgoing, because they're so afraid of, the crest first, the team first. At the same time, though, yes, okay, you want to care about your team, but not doing anything hurts you guys financially, because every other sport has guys out there who get out there and increase their value, increase the league's value. And hockey guys don't do that for the most part. And we see why the NHL lags behind every other league, because not every guy, but a lot of guys would rather be anonymous and never stand out and never be in the commercials and never be the face of anything.
They don't want to be him. They don't want to be him.
No.
They don't want to be that guy. Yes, thank Carl. Like the stream to avoid. It's not just that. If we don't get you guys and ladies and gentlemen to like the stream, actually Steve sneaks into our house at night and steals our pillows, and he replaces them with bags of old rotten apples. Like it's
the meanie.
It's so rough. It's really rough to work here. Now we're gonna wrap it up because obviously the game went late, and I think everyone's got some work to do. I intelligently pushed my work till after the stream tonight, so I have some writing to do myself. But Avry, we're gonna go 1-2. What do the Golden Knights have to do to win Game 4? What's important for them?
I think I said earlier is establishing the forecheck and really just getting pressure on Florida early. Florida also, because we have seen the Vegas forecheck cause havoc in the postseason. We saw them causing nightmares against Dallas, causing nightmares against the Edmonton Oilers. This is a team in which when they're pressure, they're a very hard team to stop when they get going, and they're a very complete team on all four lines. When Bruce Cassidy can line match, it's tough to stop them. So really, I just think it's get the forecheck going early and find ways to get Jonathan Bobrovsky early and often. I think, Mark, that would be a key for them in Game 5.
Yeah, don't stress out about it too much either, right? Because they have to keep in mind that they were probably the better team tonight, if we're being perfectly honest. Oh, Claire's heading out, and Carl's going to work. Jeez. All right. Are you going to go line up for some terrible... Is there terrible Tim Hortons near where you live, Carl? But hey, have a great shift. And Claire's leaving, and I always have to say... I didn't say hi, Claire, because I always do, but I'm going to say bye, Claire. She's in every single stream I've done for the last 5 years. Doesn't matter where it is. So Claire is my Matthew Tkachuk, is my MVP. Let's finish it out here. Again, we're going to thank Robert for moderating, all the awesome people. Thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, it means a lot. We'll give the last word to you, Avry. What do the Panthers have to do here to tie up this series?
Ooh, what do the Panthers have to do to tie up the series? That is a
because it's not just a momentum. Like, yes, they have the momentum, but I mean, they still have to. It's still a huge hill to climb here.
It is. I think also he's being responsible in their own end of the puck. That's gonna be the big thing. Like we've seen this team. We know they got this strong defense, but I think it's really a matter of being smart with the puck in your own end of the ice. And get to the front of that, get to Adin Hill, get in front of Adin Hill. Because I think in this series, we've seen how important it is, high danger chances are for both teams. So really, I think for Florida, it's being responsible in front of your own net with guys like if Goose is back. And then again, really just high danger chance. That's going to be a big thing for Florida to try and continue to get on Adin Hill, Mark.
I think it all comes down to which coach is more petty. So whoever, because it's a good point here that Paul Maurice also, there could be some pettiness on that end too, right?
Yes.
He went through there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to end it now. Hi, Adam. Bye, Adam. Thank you, everyone, for Dave, for being in the chat. Dakota, much appreciated. As per usual, the chat was excellent. Thank you to everyone at SDPN. Thank you, Avry. I'll be back. So unfortunately, you won't see Avry. That sucks. We're losing the best part of me, but I'll be back on Saturday, and we have possibly Samantha might join us. We'll see. But if not, it's going to be Julian McKenzie. Well, actually, I convinced Julian to come on board, and Julian is just one of my favorite people overall. And you know what? We might even sneak in some Andrew Berkshire in there. So it'll be a little bit of a reunion between us three, and that'll be on Saturday for Game Over, immediately after Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final. The series is tied 2-1. The Panthers had a heroic game. Now, that was just Matthew Tkachuk's becoming a legend because of it. And you know what? We got ourselves a series, and I think that's what's the most important thing. So shout out to all the Golden Knights fans. Shout out to all the Panthers fans. And we will see you on Saturday. That's it for us. Salut, and have a great night.
Later.
Game over! Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.